6. Hope you are well. I'm back to read you story time. Today I'm actually going to read you 2 chapters of the book. From now on, I think every day I'll read you 2 chapters. Now, the last time I read you the story, they'd found their mum, thankfully, had got there safely, but they couldn't stay overnight in the house, and so they were going back with the young girl that they met, Grace, to Soweto. And I asked you to sort of look up and find out some things about Soweto, so I hope you have had a chance to do a little bit of research about what Soweto was like. It was a very important place at the time in terms of historically understanding apartheid and what it was like for people to live in ghettos. Right, the next chapter is called Police. It was rush hour when they got on the train to Soweto, and the children clung on tightly to Grace. There was no sitting space, and it felt as if all their breath was being squeezed out of them. Grown-up bodies pressed in from above and all around them. Some people laughed, some people swore, and others kept silent as the train shook and lurched on its way. At each station, the crowd heaved towards the carriage door, people urgently pushing their way through. Naledi and Tiro tried to press backwards to stay close to Grace, but in a sudden surge at one of the stations, they found themselves being carried forward, hurling out onto the platform. Desperately, they tried to reach back to the open door, but passengers were still coming out, although the train was already beginning to move on. Oh, so they've become separated from Grace right now, okay? Naledi was just able to see Grace wedged inside. She was trying to get out, but the train was on its way. Naledi and Tiro looked at each other in dismay. What now? Everyone was walking towards the stairs, which led to a bridge over the railway line. Soon the platform would be empty, and the guard would see them. No tickets, no money, no idea of how they could find Grace. They would have to wait until she came back to them. Yet there was nowhere to hide on the platform. Let's go and look from the bridge, Naledi suggested. Suddenly, without any warning, there was a commotion up ahead. 3 figures in uniform stood at the top of the stairs. Police! People began turning around and coming rapidly back down. Some began running along the platform towards a high barbed wire fence at the other end. The runners leapt at the fence and scrambled over it. Others jumped down onto the track, sprinted over the railway lines, and clambered up to the opposite platform. But just as they got there, more policemen appeared on that side. So, this description, what impression do you get of the police at this moment? I mean, I know we've sort of had mentions of the police earlier, but this kind of epitomized the attitudes. It really shows the way that the people felt at the time, and their reaction is very telling. It sort of really tells us exactly what was happening. So what's your impression of the police from this description? And why do you think people ran away? I mean, they risked their lives. Some went on the railway tracks to try and get away. Where can we go? Tiro urgently tugged at his sister's hand. We'll have to slip past them, she whispered, pulling him towards the stairs. Some people were feeling into their pockets, others frantically searching through bags. Pass raid! A man was protesting loudly that he had left his pass at home. It would only take 2 minutes to get it. The police could come and see it, or someone could call his child to bring it. He cried out his address once, twice, slap. Who's your beg? Which means shut up, barked the white officer in charge. His blue eyes stared coldly as a black policeman pushed the man against the wall. One at a time, people were pulled forward to be checked. When a boy said that he wasn't yet 16, the policeman just yelled he was a liar and a loafer. Tiro felt his heart freeze, but the boy didn't cry. Instead, his eyes seemed to have fire in them as he was handcuffed. A voice in the crowd shouted, "Shame!" locking up children. As the muttering grew louder, a woman spotted Naledi and Tiro and screamed, "You'll say these kids are 16 next." The white officer took a threatening step forward. He looked murderous. Then, glancing at the children, he made a sign with his hand for them to go through. For a moment I thought, oh no, they're going to get captured there. "We can't stay on the bridge while the police are here," panted Naledi, when they had gone past. From the bridge they could see the road outside and the railway station. Next to a large van were more people. An old woman was being pushed inside the van. Tiro looked back at the people in handcuffs on the bridge. "Why don't we run and call the child to bring his father's pass? We heard the address, so we can find it." "Let's hurry then," agreed Naledi. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, they really want to help this young boy, but Grace might come back looking for them. What do you think might happen? I'm not sure. I'm not so sure about this bit. Once past the police van, they asked a lady selling apples at the roadside to point out the way. The children weaved in and out of people as they ran along the stony road between rows of grey block houses, all looking exactly alike. No great leafy trees here, only grey, smoky settling everywhere. When they reached the right number, sorry, there's a typo in here. When they reached the right number house, they found a boy struggling with a heavy tub. As soon as he understood their message, he dashed into the house, and a minute later came rushing out with a book in his hand. All three raced back down the road, but just as they came in sight of the station, there was a big police van pulling off. The boy shouted at it as it sped past them, carrying away his father. He flung the pass down, picked up a stone and let it fly at the van. The van swung round the corner, the stone just grazing the mudguard. "I'll burn this one day," stormed the boy, picking up his father's pass. "How can our parents put up with it?" There was fury in his voice. Then it became gentler. "Thanks anyway for trying. I must go and tell my mother now." The children stood silently watching as he walked back home. Naledi, Tiro. Startled, they looked round to find from where the voice was coming from. It sounded quite far off. Looking up towards the railway bridge, they saw Grace waving. Quickly, they ran back to the station. Grace came down with their tickets to get them through. It was a relief to be with her again. "This time I'm really going to hold on to you," she told them, taking each firmly by the hand. "Do you know what happened to us, Mama?" Tiro was asked, anxious to tell Grace all. Right, the next chapter is called The Photograph. So this was a little bit of a sort of, there wasn't a huge amount to this chapter that I've just read. But it's sort of stopped. There was it's almost like a side bit, I think, that's trying to highlight the relationship with the police and people's frustrations about having to have a pass and the injustices that were sort of going on. But they're back with Grace now. I've got my own feelings about these chapters and some of the things that I feel, I don't know, as a writer I feel some of it's just too nicely wrapped up. I don't know how you're feeling. I'm sort of feeling, they were lucky they got someone to help them. They met a person, there's a lot of coincidental stuff that doesn't work for me. They happened to meet Grace, who happened to have the mother living right next, who happened to be then going back. She happened to come back and find them right at the moment when they'd gone away. So those things, I don't know. I think if I was going to critique the book, those are the things that I find a little bit hard. I think perhaps it could have been slightly better, well thought out, but who am I? Anyway, The Photograph. When at last they arrived at Grace's house, two boys, a little younger than Tiro, came racing out, then stopped short to look at Naledi and Tiro. "Paul, Jonas, I brought some friends for you," Grace announced. Her brothers smiled shyly. Inside the house was dark until Grace lit a lamp. The small room was almost filled by a table, a cupboard and stove. "Hungry?" asked Grace. Four heads nodded. It wasn't long before a good smell of beans was coming from the pot. Jonas and Paul brought out some wire cards, and the younger children were soon busy discussing different things they had made, while Grace chatted with Naledi. Before the meal, hands had to be washed at the tap outside the back door. "Our people wash and clean up for others all day, but look how we must wash ourselves," Grace spoke sharply. Naledi wanted to ask Grace what she meant, but Tiro had begun splashing water. "Stop it, Tiro, you're wasting water." Naledi made him come away from the tap. She explained how they had to buy water from the village tap at home. "We used to get our water from the river, but it's all dried up now." "Was your river very big? Were there crocodiles?" Paul and Jonas, who had never been beyond Johannesburg, were curious. It was while they were eating that Naledi noticed a small photograph on the wall of Grace's mother with 4 children. It had been taken some years ago when Paul and Jonas were no more than babies. "Who's this?" Naledi inquired, pointing to a boy who looked a few years older than Grace. "That's our oldest brother, Dumi, but he isn't here anymore," replied Grace rather quietly. "Where is he?" asked Tiro. "If I tell you, you mustn't go shouting about it." Naledi and Tiro shook their hands. "But remember what Mama said, Grace? We mustn't talk about it or Duma will be in trouble." Paul looked very worried. "It's all right," assured his sister. "These two aren't big mouths like some kids around here." By now, Tiro and Naledi were looking quite puzzled. "You see," Grace began, "our brother Dumi got picked up by the police in 76. That was a time when the students here and all over were marching and the place was on fire." Grace paused. "You must know about it, or were you too young then?" The older students at school sometimes talk about such things, but we don't know much, Neledi admitted. So with the dim light from the lamp flickering through their shadows on the walls of the small room, Grace began to tell the children, her story. Okay, so we find out a little bit more information about Grace and her family. Obviously the mother works near where Neledi and Tiro's mum works, and the children are living by themselves with Grace. They're hospitable, and this is something that's actually well known about many places in Africa, that people are extremely welcoming. I know definitely when I go to Morocco, that's definitely the case. Even if you're really poor, you're extremely hospitable. They will welcome you, give you food. So although this might seem a little bit odd, taking in strangers and giving them food, this is part of the culture of many countries in Africa, and that's it, you know, it's still the case. I've experienced it myself from strangers. Interesting thing about Dumi, the brother who got picked up by police, it mentions the year 1976. So now we have a slightly better time frame for this book, because up to this point we didn't really know. And so 1976, in the photo, the little boys, so I'm using a bit of deduction, the little boys were quite young. They were no more than babies. And so this book must be sometime in the 80s when it was written. Okay, so there was a student uprisings, and that happened a bit, but there were many, particularly this, you know, the one in 1976. It's worth going and looking up and finding out about. So have a look to see, you know, student uprisings, Soweto, and see if you can find out a bit more information about that and why they did what they did. It was young people sort of really expressing how they felt, and it's interesting because it's something that's, you know, you can think about. We don't have apartheid around us, but there's lots of injustice, there's lots of things happening in the world. How can we make a difference to the world? And young people can. You can see, you know, young people now, you've got Malala, you've got Greta Thunberg, these young women who are trying to make a difference to the world, and perhaps start having a look and think, why did the students do what they did, and what happened when that uprising happened. I remember learning about it. I remember, just out of interest, finding out about a young man called Stephen Biko, and read his autobiography. Well, I don't think it was autobiography, it was a biography on him many years ago when I was, I think, in secondary school. Something out of interest. Anyway, I've gone on for quite a long time. These sessions will be slightly longer because I'm reading 2 chapters, but I'll see you tomorrow. Hope you have a great day.